we could get board members to come up, we will start with roll call.
Nice.
I'm sorry, hang on just a second. Sorry. Before we begin the meeting, before we do roll call, we do have a new board member. We would like to welcome Greg Gastineau to the state board. So welcome, congratulations on being appointed. Greg is a practicing teacher, which is nice to have that lens here. Also, you have coached and have some great experience, come with some really great remarks and comments about you from students and families and those powers to be. So welcome to the state board. We're glad to have you. Roll call, please.
Dr. Byron Ernest.
Here.
Dr. David Freitas.
Here.
Mr. Greg Gastineau.
Here.
Mr. Gordon Henry.
Yes.
Dr. Marion McMahon.
Here.
Katie Moe.
Here.
Mr. Tony Walker.
Present.
BJ Watts.
Here.
Ms. Carrie Wicker.
Here.
Dr. Cindy Hager.
Here.
Superintendent Wong.
Here. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are now at election of chair, vice chair, and secretary. Let's take a motion for secretary first. Is there a motion for secretary?
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
I'd like to offer a motion for a slate of officers.
Okay.
That being Chair BJ Watts, Vice Chair Katie Mote, Secretary Gordon Henry.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it is my absolute pleasure to turn this meeting over to Mr. Watts.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. Approval of the minutes. We have November 14th and December 12th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Could I have a second, please?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. Statement of the chair. Just wanted to welcome Greg. That would be the only thing. We've already done that, so certainly welcome. Glad to have you on board. Board member comments and reports.
I read in the Indy Star yesterday that the House Republicans are looking at raising teacher salaries, which is an issue this board has talked about many times, and we certainly support that. And I was greatly encouraged and inspired that they are going to start to tackle that issue. A lot of details weren't in the article, and so the devil's in the details, right, Jennifer? And
correct.
And so since we have a member on this board representing Speaker of the House, Byron, do you have anything to say about that? Any details or any comments on their initiative to have teacher pay being one of their highest legislative priorities?
I would, wow, thanks for putting me on the spot there. All I would say is it is a priority, and they've been working with lots of groups, ISTA, all those groups with that. And I think that's important to know. And beyond that would be beyond my scope of being able to comment.
Since we've supported it over the years, Byron, is there anything that you would recommend that we could get involved with in supporting it? Do you think a resolution from this board would be in order? Or are there other ways that we can support what they're trying to do?
I think a resolution would be fine. My belief would be that they are very committed to making this happen.
Thanks. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, you're fine.
I think it's so critical and something we've talked about for many years, and it's needed in Indiana. I wanted to take that opportunity to at least acknowledge and commend them for taking up this issue.
Any other comments? Tony?
I heard a staggering statistical projection recently from some artificial intelligence experts and economists where they are predicting that in the next 15 years, 47% of the jobs that currently exist in this country may be automated and obsolete. And I think that really, it gave me pause, first of all, particularly in light of the work we're doing now with graduation pathways. There's been a lot of narrative that has associated education recently with job training. And I think we have to be really reflective about that, particularly as jobs themselves are being eliminated, and the kids that are in school now are going to have very different relationship to work, to the economy than what most of us have experienced in our lives. And the difficult part of being on a policy-making board like this is having to project out 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years into the future and try to really get a sense of the world that the kids that are in kindergarten are actually going to live in. And I always grew up thinking or being told that education should help you learn to live a better life. And it's not just about help you get some job that we hope is going to be there 20 or 30 years from now. So I just think we have to keep that at the forefront in terms of what our mission is. And we're not just trying to move kids through the economy here. We're trying to give them a sense of self that will help enrich their lives for their whole lives.
Thank you. Katie?
Kind of in building on Tony's comments, that journey begins in pre-K. And so wanted to congratulate and recognize the governor and his staff and those who worked on the nearly $7 million federal grant that Indiana was awarded this week to support the additional expansion of early childhood education. As a Hoosier mother with 2 young children, both of whom benefited from preschool education in nearly 3 years of preschool education. I know that they are set on the path that Tony describes and understanding the value of education and having that foundation that we hope to be able to make available to all Hoosier students. So just want to recognize the state for that good work.
Tony?
I'm sorry, I should have probably done this all at once. but I do want to also take a moment to just recognize Dr. Louis Farabee's move to Washington, D.C. as the new Chancellor of Education there. That I'm a graduate of the D.C. public school system, so I actually am looking forward to having him arrive there and do maybe at least half as good of a job as he did here in Indianapolis. So I just want to applaud him for his work that he did at IPS over the last 5 years, which included reinventing the IPS high schools by offering all students an opportunity to concentrate, study in career-themed academies, his partnering with the charter school operators to establish innovation network schools, his finding ways to compensate teachers for their expanded leadership responsibilities, and his development of a student-based budgeting model whereby the money follows the kid through the IPS school corporation. And I wish Dr. Farabee well and appreciate the work he did with us here on the State Board of Education Turnaround Committee. And I think we made some progress under his leadership with the schools then under our jurisdiction at IPS. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I have just a couple of comments, and Dr. Freitas, thank you for your comments regarding teacher pay. It's time that we as professionals start paying our professionals closer to what they deserve. I know it's probably not possible or feasible to pay them everything they deserve, but that those salaries and fringe benefits need to be looked at and addressed. So I commend the speaker for those comments. I would question the speaker's comments regarding, as a former administrator, the fact that we're paying, in his opinion, paying administrators too much, and administrators take too much of the education salary. I call that into question because there are studies across the state that do not reflect the data that the speaker threw out there. The other thing, a couple other things, Brian, if you could come up, we talked about Muncie schools giving a report, and there's kind of an update on that. Could somebody give I asked last month asked if we could get an update from Muncie Schools on their progress and their reorganization. And I know that staff have looked into that and have kind of a tentative plan. I don't want to put you in a corner, but a tentative plan.
Yeah, we're just working with you and find the right.
Can't hear you speaking.
We're working with DUAT, so they'll, for a representative to give an update to the board and discussion.
I've talked with Dr. Edwards, Steve Edwards, and he is interested in coming forward. So feel free to connect with him as he's kind of running the show there right now. But DUAB, I'm sure, might be a worthy connection as well.
Muncie's out from the DUAB umbrella, correct? So I just want to make sure the board's not getting confused. I know connections are one thing, but I just want to make sure we're not getting that muddied up. They're not under DUAB any longer.
Steve Edwards would love to come and address this board.
I'm sure he would.
Okay.
One other thing, this morning learned this is National Women and Men in Blue Day. So as you see police officers and those people who protect us every day in every way, extend your hand and say thank you.
Any other board comments? Seeing none, up next we have best practice. It is my pleasure today. We have our friends from Perry Township, and I have had the distinct pleasure to spend time in their buildings and see the great work that they're doing firsthand. So excited to have you guys here. We have Perry Township Schools and the National Institute for Excellence in Training. Pat, you are up, brother.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, thank you for allowing us to take some time here in your board meeting to express the opportunities we give students in Perry Township schools each and every day. I'd like to introduce the folks I have with me today. Some of them will be in front of you making a presentation, but first is Vicki Carpenter, our Assistant Superintendent of Foundational Learning for Pre-K through 5. Mr. Bob Bohannon, the Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Schools 6 through 12. Jane Pollard, our Director of Title I. Whitney Wilkowski, our Director of EL and Professional Development. Emily Hartman, our School Board Member. And then from the National Institute of Excellence in Teaching, we have Patrice Pujol, the Co-President and Chief Strategy Officer. We have Jen Oliver, the Senior Program Specialist. And we have Kristen Van Hook, their Chief Policy Officer. Back in October, we sent all of you who were current board members at that time an invitation to come to Perry Township as NIET contacted us and told us they were going to bring us an award recognizing educator effectiveness. Well, NIET had been in existence for 19 years and they'd never went to a district and recognized teacher effectiveness in a school district across the United States. And at that point in time, I was really happy. You know, we're going to come recognize our teachers and our administrators for all the hard work, give us an award, and it's going to be a great day. Well, Lowell Milken, the founder of NIET, came that day, and he not only presented us with an award, he gave us $50,000 in cash to support our efforts and reinforce professional development activities in our school district. Today what we're going to do is we're going to kind of outline what Perry Township looks like. And you might be surprised that 10 minutes south of here you have one of the most diverse school districts in the state of Indiana. And at the same time we also have a poverty level that is over 70%. But the results that we're getting with the work that we do is just focusing on instruction. It's not a fly-by-night program. It gets back down to common sense and basic skills of educating students. And you'll also see the hashtag that we have up there. And this is what we believe each and every day. We grow kids. And student growth is very, very important to us in Perry Township schools. But we're just not growing the ones at the bottom. We're growing the ones at the top as well. And my motto is we're going to get better every day. And if we have a bad day today, it's easier to be better tomorrow. So we'll start our presentation, and once we've had both Perry Township and NIET kind of go through things, then we'd welcome questions from the board. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Welcome, Bob.
Good morning, board. Thank you so much. From Perry Township, we are greatly appreciative of the opportunity to stand in front of you and tell you a little bit about Perry's story. And my responsibilities today are going to give you a little bit of a picture. And as Mr. Mapes said, you heard the word growth multiple times. That's what you're going to hear in this presentation too. We're going to talk to you a little bit about growth and a little bit of history in Perry Township. So as you look at the growth we've had over the last 5 years, just in our enrollment. So our enrollment, as you see, has risen. It's something we're very proud of in Perry Township, that we continue to grow. And with growth comes opportunities, and with that growth sometimes comes some few challenges as well. And we're going to tell you a little bit about how we're meeting those challenges. As we grow, what we're finding in our growth is not only are we getting more students, but the students that are coming to Perry Township or growing through Perry Township, they have some needs, and those are some students in poverty. So we have grown from about 61% of our students that were free and reduced students to now over 70%, almost 72%. So with that, obviously, it comes some challenges, but challenges that we're working very hard to meet. One of the largest growths, if you know much about Perry Township over the last several years, is our growth in our English language learners, and in particular our growth with our refugee population. So as you'll see, we have 4,700 students that this year, that topped out at just under 5,000 students a couple of years ago. And this all really was transpired when we had the refugee population from Burma. So we have a large Burmese population. In fact, if the statistics are still the same, we have the largest Burmese population in the world outside of Burma. And so right here in Perry Township. So something that has enriched our community. And again, comes with a set of challenges when our students are struggling a little bit when it comes to the English language. So, and again, we talked a little bit about that refugee trend data, and as we look, you can see very easily how that refugee population has grown. And it peaked out a couple of years ago. You may know through some changes in our own government, and those that can get into our country easier or less easy now than maybe in the past, that refugee population for us has decreased slightly, but we're still seeing an influx of refugee populations continuing to grow here in Perry Township. The language, we have 73 languages spoken in Perry Township. I'm gonna let that sink in just a little bit. It includes 8 different dialects in some of our languages. These languages come from 67 different countries. This just gives you a quick little snapshot of some of the languages that are spoken in our buildings, and how and we'll talk a little bit later about how we're trying to address some of those things as well, and some of the results that we're finding. So as we look at not only our EL and refugee numbers by school now, we'll also be able to show you a little bit as we look at our 2018 letter grade, just how are our students doing overall, and how are our EL students doing in our schools overall from an academic standpoint. So you take a quick little look, and if you look at our letter grades overall for the district, you'll see outside of one outlier we have that we're at AB schools in each of our schools. And you'll look and see, again, the total number of students that are EL students in those buildings, and the percentage of those EL students on the total percentage of students. You'll see in many cases we're almost 50% of the students in a single school that come to us as EL students or refugee students. We also then began to take a look, okay, this looks really good for us, but how does this compare to others? And so we looked at other school corporations that had 1,500 or more EL students that they educate every day. And as we looked at our performance overall, we were not surprised, but we were also very happy about the results that we're finding. So 25%, we have 25% of our students, our EL students. Of that 25% students, as we look at all of our students overall, you'll see 51% of our students are passing both EL, or English language arts and mathematics. But if you look at also just our EL students alone, their performance has been at the top. If you look at just the passing rate for EL students in language arts, passing rate for EL students in mathematics, and also the passing rate for both math and language arts, we continue to lead the way, and we'll continue to work on that and show even more improvements. It's always good for us to take a look at how do we compare with our neighbors. So as we looked at the surrounding districts and said, okay, so how are we comparing? And again, there's little, as you look at the EL counts, and we know that in some of our school districts, some of our neighboring school districts, they have less EL students, but we wanted to see how do we compare? How are we standing next to and comparing to the other districts in Marion County? And as you see, we're performing very well in Marion County overall. And as you look at some of the differences in population and so on, I think it'll show that we're exceeding maybe some expectations out there. It goes back to the growth piece, and this is something we probably spend as much time looking at and digging through the data on our growth as we do any other piece of what we feel is important. And we know that if we can grow our students, regardless of where they start, that we're going to find higher levels of success. And over the last 3 years, you'll see that even in our top 75% of our kids that we're finding growth over 100%. In our bottom 25%, we're seeing even higher levels of growth. You'll see that both in English language arts and in mathematics. It's something that we stress. It's our total focus. And as we begin to grow, then we begin to look at also how are we going to increase that rigor as well as we're growing. So that has been our focus as we looked at over the last 3 years, and will continue to be our focus as we move forward. So here's some trend data for us as we look at our own district, overall district grades. So as we look at our district grades, as you'll see from 2011, and as we have progressed, we feel like that we are continuing to grow, continuing to find high levels of success, and providing opportunities for our students to leave our schools, both of our high schools, ready to be successful young people. So I will now it's my pleasure and opportunity to turn it over to Mrs. Carpenter, and she'll talk to you a little bit about now about the how and not just the growth.
Bob, if you would.
Oh, no, please.
Dr. McCormick has a question, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
We'll do that now.
So
sure.
On your enrollment, I'm curious, I think it was maybe your second slide, sorry.
Okay.
It looks like you have a big increase, was that right? Yeah.
We have.
So out of that, what percentage would be out of your district transferring in?
Okay, so the question was, our enrollment has increased. So what percentage of that has been students that have moved into our district?
Your transfer kids are moving in from other districts.
Okay, we looked at the percentage-wise. We had about a 6% kids that came in. They helped us increase from about 6% of our students moved in, and that's been a trend from 15, 16 to 16, 17 hours. Our 18, 19, we are no longer an open district as of this year. Now that may change, I mean, as we look, but we were in a situation where we were growing so much we couldn't catch up from a building standpoint. Right. So we didn't have space for them. Luckily for us, our school board has allowed us the opportunity to build on, and so now we're having opportunities to bring some kids in, and I anticipate there's an opportunity for other kids to come in and transfer in as well.
And my last question, your performance grades look good. I mean, that's impressive considering your district. I mean, that is impressive.
Thank you.
Are any of your schools identified as TSI?
I believe we have one of our schools.
That's
yes.
Good. I'm assuming no CSI because of those grades, but TSI,
yes.
That's good.
Yeah,
well
thank
done.
you. Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Bob?
Real quickly, to follow up to Dr. McCormick's question, what % of students do you have transferring out, do you know?
It's a less number than transfer in. We continue to grow, and you know what? That's been an interesting trend for us. You know, historically, we have had about the same number of kiddos that leave our district as come in, and we have a transient. We have a lot of apartment complex in our district and so on. So you'll get a transient population. Of late, we have not seen that. We are retaining more students, and not only retaining our own, but those from neighboring districts have enrolled as well. So, given the graphs and the data that you presented, I would have suspected that you're having fewer leave and more coming. Yes,
in.
absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, welcome.
Good morning, board. I'm Vicki Carpenter, and I'm here to kind of talk about, Bob gave you a picture of what we look like in Perry and hopefully some evidence of some success that you see that we're having with our students in Perry. So I'm here to talk about how that's happening. You know, I was thinking, you know, it's not magic, because in Perry Township, we have structures in place that help us to be successful, but most importantly, our teachers work really hard doing good work, our administrators work really hard doing good work, and the result is our kids are growing. So we'll talk about the structures that we have in place. First of all, we would like to send our deep appreciation for the formative assessment grant, because that really makes a difference to us in Perry. In Perry, I think we get about $159,000 that we use for formative assessment, and we use that for grades K through 10. One formative assessment that we want to just touch base on, because it's a structure that we use, is called Evaluate Benchmarks. It's an assessment that we use every month with our students in grades 2 through 10, and they take an assessment to see how they've mastered year-end standards. So our teachers use this because a formative assessment, it should give you some ideas, the teacher's information to inform their instruction, and that's exactly what we do. This screen is just one of the reports that we use. This shows that the skill that the students are working on. It shows the state alignment and the Common Core alignment as well. And then throughout every 2 months, we cover all the standards towards the end of the year mastery. So in August, we would compare October pass rate to August, and that's why we're looking for growth. As Bob indicated, growth is what we're about. We take our high ability kids, we expect to grow them. We take our English language learners, we expect to grow them. We're holding all of our teachers accountable, our principals accountable for growing all their kids. So this formative assessment really is instrumental in helping us do that. So our teachers use this type of report every month, and they say, okay, what can we do to support individual students that are not mastering? So we go through these reports, and we go through it individually based on our students, individual students. If Bobby is not moving and mastering this standard, what can we do to support him? So that's really important to us as a district. This is just one report from Evaluate, and again, it's something we give every month, and every other month we've covered all the standards for the end of the year. Another important piece of this is that we celebrate growth. We go to each school that has had the most growth in any grade level in the content area, and we celebrate with our teachers that they're growing kids and that they've made the most growth of all the schools. So for example, we have 11 elementaries, and like this morning I was at Rosa Parks Elementary. They grew the most in the area of language arts for their 5th grade, because we know it's important to acknowledge all those small wins as well. Another way we use this formative assessment Evaluate is we look at it each month, and you can see here our pass rate last year on ISTEP for our 5th grade. This is 5th grade math. Our goal for iLearn this year is just a little above 71% for our 5th graders, and this is our district goal. And then what we do as a district, we pull the same kind of reports. You can see we have meets and exceeds, and that means that they are at meeting the year-end standards. They've mastered the year-end standards. And so we look at this baseline data from August and September. We compare that to the 2 months of October and November. We look at growth rates. We've done our December Evaluate, and then we're starting our January. So we're seeing a growth trend here of a little over 13%. At this rate, we say we're on target to almost meet that end of the year goal. And then we adjust that each month as we get that information. Again, it gives us some idea at the district level, are we on target to meet those year-end goals? And we do this at the class level, at the grade level, at the school level, and at the district level. Other structures of support that we have in place, With us here today is the National Institute for Excellence in Teaching. We have received support from this national group for going on over 8 years, I believe. This has been really important to us. This professional development that comes to us is provided ongoing throughout the year. It's not just a one-time thing. And it's provided to our teachers, our master teachers, our leadership team at the building levels, and our principals and our district administrators as well. The second bullet says all teachers receive cluster, we call it cluster. It's professional development every week. And that's based on what's important for their school. So we do field testing to determine what strategies need to be used to address those students' needs. So it's really important that what we do is based on the students of that school. In the past, you can pull up a strategy and teachers would say, how do we know this is going to work for our kids? Our kids are different. Our kids can't always do that. But when you field test in that building with their kids and you use them by name, they're going to know it's going to work because we have evidence. We field tested before we brought it to all the teachers. The third is the career pathways for our teachers. We have master teachers in every building and we have mentor teachers, and those teachers serve on a leadership role. They serve in the professional development of cluster. Our master teachers present the professional development. Our master teachers also help to support our evaluations. Our mentor teachers provide that real voice. They're teaching all day, every day, but they also give us some input on what we're doing to make sure that it's going to work for the kids. And then if there are any problems, they make sure that they let us know, again, before we roll something out to the teachers. The next one is the formative assessment, and again, we use Evaluate for grades 2 through 10, and we use M-Class right now for K and 1. M-Class is 3 times a year, which is great. Having that monthly benchmark Evaluate really provides that real-time data for us, which is really important. And the last is each school has an instructional leadership team. That includes the mentor teachers, which are classroom teachers, our master teachers, our administrators, and they meet every week and they discuss teacher evaluation data. They discuss student achievement data. They talk about teacher growth plans. How can they support teachers? And what are we going to do in cluster professional development? So it's really important that we continue that support. And what's really been important for us as a district leadership team is that we continue to get professional development. I mean, it's easy to say, hey, teachers, you need professional development every week, but principals, you don't, or district level, you don't, but that's not our approach. We want to model that growth mindset. So our principals get that professional development. We get that professional development. Each year, we're like, well, how do we not know this from the year before? But having a national expert, a consultant that does the research and is able to push you, it takes you out of your comfort zone, that's for sure, but it also helps us to continue to grow as well. Our superintendent Mapes, Bob and I, and our district administrators, we're in the buildings. We're in the buildings all the time. We're in the buildings, we're at their ILT meetings, we're in their classrooms, we're at their cluster meetings. So it's important for us to truly know what's going on, and we give feedback to them. So the teachers know it's really important. They see us in the buildings. The kids know it's important. It's not anything unusual to see one of us in the classroom, and we talk to the kids about, okay, what are you learning, and how is this going to help you? I heard some of you talk about in the future what might happen to job opportunities. I think the biggest change in Perry is that now we focus on teaching students to think for themselves and to problem solve and to work in collaborative groups, because we know for them to be successful in life, in the job market, they've got to be able to apply that knowledge. And so it's really important that we practice that. We actually start this whole structure, these models, in preschool. So it's really important for us to be able to support our kids in thinking for themselves and problem solving. So with that, we're going to let NIET come up and share some things, unless you have specific questions.
Are there any questions, board members?
Just a quick question on your 5th bullet on the screen. You talk about master teachers, administrators, mentor teachers, meet weekly to discuss teacher evaluation data, student achievement data, teacher growth plans, and so forth. So you're talking about teacher evaluations in that group? As I saw that, maybe there's an explanation of that goes outside of what my thoughts are.
When we have a leadership team that includes discussing teacher evaluation or supporting teachers, that includes our master teachers, anyone that does evaluations. Our master teachers, our administrators are certified to do evaluations. Our mentor teachers don't do evaluations. So that topic of teacher evaluation data is not discussed when our mentors are there.
So you have teachers evaluate other teachers?
We have our master teachers evaluating teachers, yes, yeah. And they, you know, our teachers, our administrators, anyone that does evaluations, they're recertified every year. In fact, we are as well, because we do certifications so that we can evaluate our master teachers.
What do you mean recertified?
We have to go through national training to get certified so that, you know, that we're all looking at the rubric we use in the same way and that we're looking at evidence the same way so that it's as fair as possible for them.
The teachers who are taking on a leadership role, I commend you for that. I think there's many, many teachers who would enjoy that kind of work, but they don't want to go into administration for various kinds of reasons. So that's a great, great model. So my question is, do those teachers receive release time from their full teaching load? Do they receive a stipend? What's the incentive for them to do this work?
Well, and that's a good question. Initially, when we started this relationship, 2 of our schools were fully implemented TAP schools, and there was a stipend attached to being a master teacher or mentor teacher. But all the other 15 schools we had were not fully implemented TAP schools. So we don't have a stipend, and currently we don't have a stipend for our master teachers or mentor teachers. The master teachers are fully released because they plan, cluster, they support teachers in the classroom, they team teach, they do walkthroughs and provide data. Our mentor teachers are classroom teachers, and when they're doing that leadership team meeting, they're doing it after school normally. They don't get paid extra to do that, but they know that they are making a difference and their voice is influencing what's happening in the building. So because we had that conversation earlier, is it the money that really is motivating them? And we would like to be able to give them some money for that, I'll be honest. It would be great to be able to do that, but that's not what's motivating them. Knowing that they're making a difference for kids is what's motivating them.
Any other questions by board members?
So a master teacher has no teaching assignments?
No, what they do is they do have an assignment where they do field testing. So the field testing strategies that roll out, that is done in the classroom and a lot of times in the mentor teacher's classroom. So they do have that ongoing relationship with kids, but that actual assigned classroom is not part of their role.
Any other questions? I just have one comment, if you would. I've seen your interaction with your teachers, and it's obvious that you're demanding and the expectations are very, very high at Perry. But the best thing for me to see was that your teachers did not feel infringed upon by this. They didn't feel like it was a gotcha system. It is truly just a, hey, we want to get better every single day for our students. And that starts with leadership, so you should all be commended for that, because that's a hard thing to do.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us here today. We're honored to be here to speak with you about our work here in the state of Indiana. And certainly we are honored to partner with Perry Township. What a phenomenal example of a district that has taken the tenets of NIET's work and really implemented it well, made it their own such that they're seeing tremendous outcomes for students. And certainly we are excited to have been able to award them with NIET's first ever National Award of Excellence for Educator Effectiveness. They're such a deserving district and really a model for districts across the state and across the nation for how the work of moving teachers practice in order to move students should happen. We are certainly proud to support them in their journey towards educator effectiveness, improving educator effectiveness, and improving outcomes for students. They're doing a tremendous job. For over 2 decades, the research has been clear that the single most important factor, school-based factor, in a child's education is the quality of the classroom teacher. And we all intuitively know that, but the research certainly backs that up. At NIET, we help build processes through which educators continuously improve their practice to assure stronger academic outcomes for students. And you saw how Vicki brought you through those structures and processes that we use and that they do so well. NIET partners with districts and with universities. We partner with school districts like Perry Township, impacting over 8,500 schools, 250,000 teachers, and 2.5 million students across the country. We provide intensive both on-site and online training and coaching for high-need schools. We don't just train and walk away, we provide intensive coaching as well. We have created strong career ladder systems and trained 30,000 teacher leaders to lead instructional improvement in their schools across the nation. We also partner with 50 college and university educator preparation programs in order to support their pre-service teachers. So when we think about educator effectiveness, we look at it across the spectrum of where we can make a difference in improving the quality of classroom instruction. We also partner with states and state departments of education. We have partnered with state departments of education in Tennessee, in Texas, and in South Carolina to develop teaching standards that create a common language, a common understanding of strong classroom teaching, and a clear understanding of how to build teacher capacity. And of course, Perry Township uses the standards that we have developed at NIET. In Ohio and Tennessee, we support the Department of Education's online data management and their training resource portals in order to provide training to teachers. Our in-person training is delivered at the request of states and of districts and provides support for measurable increases in teacher classroom instruction and certainly in student achievement. And in states like Louisiana and Tennessee and South Carolina, we are providing intensive systems of support for schools that are identified for comprehensive school improvement under their ESSA plans. So we approach educator effectiveness in a variety of ways through a variety of partnerships. But we have 20 years of experience in raising student achievement in high-need schools. Almost all of the schools we work in are high-need schools. And we do this by investing in teachers and school leaders. For 8 years, we've worked here in the state of Indiana, again, in high-need schools across the state. At this time, I'd like for y'all to learn a little bit more about our work across the state. You've heard a lot about what we do in Perry Township, but certainly there are other districts with whom we partner and other work that we do here. And so I'd like to turn the presentation over to Jen Oliver, who is the leader of NIET's work here in Indiana. And she's going to talk specifically about how we've made a difference in high-need schools and districts here in this state. Jen?
Thank you, Patrice. Thank you, members of the board, for having us here today to share a little bit more about our work. I want to first also start by congratulating my friends in Perry Township for receiving NIET's inaugural award for excellence in educator effectiveness. I've had the distinct honor and pleasure of supporting and working with that district for about 8 years, and just want to take this moment to again commend their results, commend the efforts that they have put in place to support teachers, and to congratulate them and celebrate the student growth that they're seeing as a result. I want to talk to you a little bit today about how we approach partnerships with districts like Perry Township and others across the state of Indiana and across the nation. As you can see up here on the slide, we approach this work through 4 main tenets, and we help schools, districts, and states to improve classroom instruction by investing in people. We invest in people to grow local capacity and to build the structures to support continuous improvement. We do this in 4 main ways. First, as we all know, it begins with excellent teaching, excellent instruction. We partner to define excellent instruction through a common set of teaching standards and to ensure that teachers have the right supports in place so that they can meet those standards and reach high expectations, as Mr. Watts mentioned earlier. We also know that collaborative professional learning is critical to continued growth. So we empower teachers, teacher leaders, to lead their own development in ways that are practical and immediately impactful in the classroom. Third, we help establish collective leadership. So we work with schools, districts, and states to build shared leadership and school-based instructional leadership teams. We partner to ensure that principals are serving as instructional leaders. And fourth, we work to strengthen culture. We know that reflective culture is critical, and that reflection, as Mrs. Carpenter mentioned earlier, reflection on student work and student data and what teaching practices can be employed to impact that data is critical for continued success. So I would say that these four elements of our work systemically. They work together as a system versus sort of random acts of school improvement. It's a cohesive model that has been successful across our country. So as a former teacher myself, and here in Indiana, I'm very inspired by this work. It's exciting to see the impact and the transformation that this work has had on teachers across our state. And I want to share with you today a few examples of my teacher friends that have been impacted by this work personally that I know. First, I would like to introduce you to Corey Callahan. That's Corey up there in that picture. She serves as a master teacher. You heard the role of master teacher described briefly earlier. She serves as a master teacher at Abraham Lincoln Elementary School in Perry Township. Corey talks about the power of having those teacher leader roles in place at her school. She says, teacher leadership is all about having someone to support you, who is doing the work with you. When things start to get rough, you can go to that teacher leader for support. I will tell you, if you ever have the opportunity to talk with Corey, you will be quickly amazed by her instructional expertise. And in this role as a master teacher, she has the opportunity to spread and expand her influence school-wide. So I want to transition a little bit too, up north to Hammond. So I want to introduce you as well to Angelina Burrows. We know how critical it is to support new teachers. Angelina actually transitioned to teaching from being a TSA agent at Chicago O'Hare Airport. Interesting career path, right? So she talks about how these structures that they put in place in Hammond supported her in her first years of teaching. She says, going into the building as a first-year teacher, I had the content knowledge. She taught middle school, but the support structures gave me the instructional knowledge I needed to transfer what I knew to students. It gave me the framework to be a proficient teacher and support students to be successful. So because of the clearly defined standards for teaching, because of the collaborative learning Angelina participated in, and because of the support from teacher leaders at her school, she was able to thrive in her first years of teaching and help her students to succeed. So shifting from new teachers to more veteran teachers, I'd like to introduce you to my friend Carl Weaver here. Carl Weaver is a bit of an icon in Goshen, Indiana, up north by South Bend. Carl taught for 42 years at Goshen High School. And he told me when I first met him several years ago, Jen, he said, my entire teaching career, people told me I was a good teacher, but I really never knew specifically why. And he said when he saw our teaching standards, he had the right language, the right supports, the right learning in place to know why he was doing what he was doing, why he was getting the results from his students. So that raising of his level of consciousness, that reflection, that deep reflection based on the reflective culture his school implemented, allowed him to proudly say that he did the best teaching in his last years of his teaching career. So those are just a few examples of our teacher friends from across the state that have been impacted by this work and this focus on educator effectiveness to drive school improvement. I hope you get a chance to visit Perry Township and see this work firsthand, or some of these other districts. We currently partner with 8 traditional school corporations across Indiana and 5 charter organizations as well. We have an exciting new partnership with Marian University, and they are working with us to embed our teaching standards into their pre-service teacher preparation coursework. And then our work, of course, is supported by various state policies, but namely, our work is noted in the Teacher Career Path statute, and also in Indiana's evaluation and observation statute as well. So as a result of these efforts and what you've seen today, our data shows that we're getting results. You saw those results from Perry Township. We also have data that shows we're getting results in terms of student growth across the country, and also in closing achievement gaps and teacher retention as well. So you can see just briefly here on this slide, we know from our data that schools that partner with us grow. They grow a little bit at first, but when these structures in place continue over time and deepen over time, and that investment continues over time, they grow tremendously. One reason for that, of course, is that we're growing teachers to grow students. And when we grow teachers, we also tend to retain them. So our data shows that our partner schools are able to retain teachers at a much higher rate than both the national average for high-need schools and demographically comparable schools. So to conclude, when teachers are thriving, students are achieving. And we're committed to continuing our partnership with our districts here in Indiana to continue that success. We'd also like to partner with this board, with the Department of Education, to expand our reach in Indiana and to support your efforts for school success, for student success, to help ensure that every student in Indiana experiences excellent teaching every classroom, every day, every year. I think that's it for me. I think at this moment, you do have some handouts from our organization. I hope you'll have a chance to dig through those. We'd love to coordinate a site visit for you to Perry Township or elsewhere, but at this time, I think we'll open it up for questions or comments from the board, either for NIET or for Perry Township as well.
I have a question for you, Jen, and maybe your colleague from NIET. I keep hearing the theme teacher leaders. And your whole concept is about professional development for teachers. And sometimes we think of professional development for teachers as a workshop on technology or a workshop on this or that. And I think once you create teacher leaders, you're embedding professional development for them that's more meaningful, at least in my opinion. And so my question in Indiana is what can we do on a policy level to unleash this concept? I appreciate you having pockets in the state, but I'm sort of a big picture kind of guy. And so what recommendations do you have to unleash this in Indiana, number one? And number two, are there other states who have created a system-wide state policy level cadre of teacher leaders?
Great. Good question.
Yes, well, first of all, you're absolutely right in your assertion about teacher leadership and what it does to professional learning in the building. I'm a former superintendent myself in Louisiana, and the difference between a sit and get workshop and the kind of professional learning that we're talking about in terms of weekly embedded learning tied closely to the classroom, to teacher need and student need, are miles apart. We do think that your policy around career ladders is indeed a good one. We think that the more we can strengthen and require that people really create career ladders in their school districts, the better you will be. We do have places across the country where there are great examples of strong teacher leaders, Tennessee being one. And it really is about building the leadership capacity at the district level, at the school level, and at the teacher leader level. And when we get that done, then the career ladder is not just something on a piece of paper, but it's something that really is vibrant and working to move all teachers in a school to affect student achievement.
Have there been any states that have passed legislation or through the regulatory process with a State Board of Education created a systemic, system-wide state program for teacher leadership? That's what I'm looking at.
Right.
Looking at a model or maybe a written regulation or
Right.
a written law that
Iowa has a comprehensive system of teacher leadership that is not only written into law, but is funded as well. So that's a good place to look for a model.
Would you be willing to connect our staff to
Absolutely.
Who to contact? Because I think this is something important we need to do in Indiana.
Absolutely.
And at least have the board consider this. I think it's a great opportunity to move forward on it. And since we have someone in Indiana already and some success in Indiana, why not share the wealth with others?
Absolutely. And you know, it's a matter of people understanding the power of the model, and it's a matter of people really empowering those teacher leaders to do the work. I've seen some models where we may have instructional coaches, but they're not really empowered to lead in the way that our protocols and structures give them the autonomy and the accountability to do. So I think it's important that as you build a system, that you really build a system that will be robust enough to assure that the teacher leaders, in concert with the principal, have real autonomy and authority to move the instructional program in the school.
Can I ask a question? I'll just add too that there is a bill moving through our legislature. The Teacher Career Pathways bill is in statute, but in this session, I believe Representative Baining is promoting some grant funding for schools to ignite teacher leader roles in their districts. So I hope that this board will support that effort as well.
So given, I just have a question. I mean, we've looked at some other states as well, and I, being a former superintendent, you understand the financial part.
Absolutely.
And Perry, I mean, to have the opportunity to have master teachers who don't teach and add those administrative positions is a great position to be in. That's not the norm in Indiana, to be honest with you. I mean, and I know a lot of it is people can say set priorities, but there are a lot of reasons for that. How important do you think it is to have a successful program that you do have funds?
I have a lot of experience in this area, having been a superintendent, and I was a superintendent in Louisiana. You'd think you don't have money here. We're one of the poorest states in the union. And we set a priority because we could see the results. We could see that it was working in other places. And I used a combination of funds. If there were grant funds available, we absolutely grabbed any grant dollars we could and purposed them to this work. But by the time I left my superintendency, I had 12 schools that were fully implementing this model with the ratios that NIET suggests, using Title I money, Title II money, pre-identified special ed 15% money, and a smaller amount of general fund dollars with no grant dollars at all. So it really is, do we think that investing in teachers is what's going to move the needle for kids? And many people are looking for some magic bullet. Well, if I buy this curriculum, or if I get this computer program, or if I could just get these technological resources into my kids' hands, then we would see the difference. But at the end of the day, it's about human capital and how are we investing in people. And one of the things I had to do as a superintendent is take a hard look at how we were spending those funds and what was our return on investment. And when I took that hard look, it really wasn't giving me the return that this was able to give me. And so we were able to redirect those dollars.
Yeah. So to be successful, though, you have to have the dollars behind it, regardless of where they come from.
Yes.
You have to prioritize to have those dollars behind it, whether it's at the state level, prioritize.
Absolutely.
At the local level, you have to have dollars to make successful programs.
Yes, absolutely. But I would contend that they don't necessarily have to be, this doesn't necessarily have to be a huge infusion of new dollars, that we can really be critical about how we are spending current dollars. But as a state, to make an investment, and that's what Iowa did, they made a fiscal investment in teacher leadership, certainly goes a long way towards showing districts that it's a priority for the state, and then giving them some seed money that then they can start looking at how can I redirect some other monies to make this really work in a robust way.
So I know you mentioned your work, Jen, you're working with Marian. What other colleges or universities in Indiana are you working with?
Currently just Marian. That's certainly another area we are hoping to expand. So if you have any suggestions of who we might want to speak with, we would love to hear that. We have had some conversations with a couple of other universities recently, the deans of their schools of education, but in terms of current partners right now, just Marian University to date.
We have some connections to university.
Yes, I would invite you
Wonderful.
to South Bend. I'll set up a meeting with the dean, and I'm very encouraged, so I'll pass my card on to you.
Good, great. Yeah, and what we found is, you know, our teaching standards maybe aren't adopted by all school districts where those universities are placing their new teachers, but we found that regardless, principals who receive those new teachers from universities that have partnered with us tell us that those teachers are classroom ready on day one. They're more prepared because they've had a deep dive and they can speak the language of instruction and they have a vision for what high quality teaching and learning entails.
Any other questions on board members? Thank you very much for coming up.
Thank you very much.
One closing comment just that we really haven't talked about is, now that this has been embedded in Perry Township schools, our students' expectation for instruction in the classroom is also holding our teachers accountable, because they know now when they're not getting quality instruction. Another piece is our retention rate of our teachers is really high, especially our new teachers, because we're not putting them on an island, closing the door and saying good luck. We have weekly, daily conversations to support them. So there's a lot of other, things on the outside that helps your school district be robust when you have a system like this in place. But I think probably the biggest thing is when I can walk into a classroom and a student can tell me what their evaluate data says and whether or not they're growing themselves. And that is as powerful as anything that we do in the township. So we thank you for your time today. I know we probably went over a little bit, but we're very excited about all the work and all the hard work our teachers are doing in Perry Township schools.
But I do want to, I think it's important to reiterate that Perry was the very first district in the United States of America to be chosen for this award. I know you stated the grind, but I hope you take time to celebrate that at some point, because it is certainly, I see your pen.
You notice our pin here. We gave every employee a pin that recognizes this national award. When I say every employee, our bus drivers, our custodians, our food service people, everybody that touches kids have received this to celebrate this, as well as banners and plaques in their buildings to let our public know your kids are being taken care of each and every day.
Good.
Pat, can I ask you, I know your district comes up quite a bit right now with conversations with our friends upstairs at the State House. What is your starting salary without supplemental and your highest salary for teachers without supplemental?
So we begin at 42.
Without compensation.
42.5.
42, and your highest without compensation, without supplemental?
84.
42 and 84.
And then we have the richest benefit plan in the state of Indiana for health, dental, vision, and annuities.
And how many referendums have you passed?
We've passed 2. We had but just 1 general fund.
Okay.
We had 2 construction referendums that have been passed.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we will go backwards because I missed public comment, and I apologize for that. Brian, I think we have 1 public comment.
Yeah, we have 1 comment.
Okay. You are up, sir. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Bob Abrams. I am the Indiana, I'm the STEM coordinator for the Indiana After School Network. But I'm here today to talk about a bigger subject. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the Indiana STEM 6-year strategic plan, which is one of the superintendent's key 2019 legislative priorities. I'm speaking as the leader of the Indiana STEM Education Task Force, which is a statewide group of about 480 representatives of business, K-12, higher ed, after school, museums, government, and community organizations that has been focused for at least the past 5 years on the development and implementation of a state STEM education strategy. The Indiana STEM strategic plan is excellent. It is an evidence-based plan informed by successful models implemented by other states, and not coincidentally, it aligns with the recently released national STEM education plan. This plan's objectives are, I believe, the right ones. Improve STEM instruction, high quality STEM curriculum, and STEM career exposure. These objectives can be achieved through the successful implementation of the key themes of the plan. Equity. All Indiana students and educators must have access to the resources required for successful STEM learning. Student empowerment. Indiana educators must receive professional development and support so that they can enable their students to become problem solvers. Partnerships. A successful and sustainable STEM learning system requires a community of contributors and supporters beyond the classroom. And finally, career development. STEM education is the foundation required to build and strengthen the Indiana economy. At its core, the Indiana STEM plan is a necessary workforce development blueprint. The STEM skills are the building blocks of Indiana's current and future economy. But Indiana employers struggle today to hire qualified employees for their STEM-based work. Full funding of this plan will allow Indiana to compete with other states that understand the necessity of developing their STEM-based workforce and are making significant investments in their educational programs to do that. I know that you are not the decision makers when it comes to the funding of the STEM strategic plan, and I expect that for many of you, if not most of you, I am preaching to the choir. But I do want to emphasize that there is very widespread support for this plan, and I encourage you to support the full funding of it in any way that you can. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I make a comment to him?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to comment on that. I appreciate your comments and your partnership that you've had with the department. Our ask for the board's sake, I know we've mentioned this before, it was $10 million a year. Given where the funding is right now, everybody's just fighting for every penny. So, but we have made it very, very clear to our General Assembly partners that we know that may have to waver a bit, and we will prioritize if need be, but we appreciate your partnership. We are hopeful we can get some dollars behind that to continue the good work that we're seeing at the local level. We have seen amazing numbers with some training in computer science. Our cyber just got announced. We're just doing some really good work K-8. There was a big hole, but I know we can't do it alone. So thank you for your words and also your partnership.
Well, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes college and career readiness tools, 8F appeals, initiate rulemaking for social, emotional, and behavioral health plan, and amendments to course titles and descriptions. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please. Do we roll call on that, Brian, or just voice vote? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. New business, teacher preparation program, Ball State University.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Superintendent, members of the board. It is my pleasure to share with you the recent decision of the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation, or CAPE, decision to grant continued national accreditation to the Teachers College at Ball State University. The decision the visit was an outstanding visit. I do want to acknowledge Mr. Sean Shriver, who's joining us today to answer any additional questions that you may have. Sean serves in the role of accreditation coordinator, and they are often the invisible force, so to speak, behind accreditation and accreditation visits and preparation. And his work was strenuous and excessive because Ball State is a very large institution, as you know. So we do recommend that the Indiana State Board of Education recognize the decision of CAPE and grant continued state recognition status for the Teachers College at Ball State University. And if there are any questions?
Any questions by board members? Dr. Brady?
Congratulations on the Ball State accreditation by CAPE. I noticed a couple of things in your report, and some things were cited that were particularly important for the entire board to hear, in my opinion. First of all of your initial teacher preparation programs are nationally recognized by professional organizations. And that is really an outstanding accomplishment, because CAPE does the School of Education or the College of Education, but then it's voluntary to have all of those various programs become national accredited. And it's not easy. And Ball State has taken the initiative and has been successful in getting 35 of those programs accredited from those organizations also. So that's really fabulous. The other thing I noticed was that there were some areas for improvement prior to this visit, and the team cited you for meeting all of those improvements that were needed for this visit. So that creates for me a level of confidence that when someone cites you for something, the organization is nimble enough to go ahead and fix those. So, and there were many other strengths. I had a whole list here, but I'm not going to go through those with you. But I did have a question. One of these citations also talked about the increasing number of students from diverse populations who are going into your university and your teacher education programs. And that's been a national issue for many teacher prep programs across the country. And you were particularly cited for doing a good job with that. So my question is, how do you do it? What wisdom can you share to other teacher prep institutions on how to be successful in that area?
Well, thank you for your kind words. And I should mention that we have wonderful faculty and staff at Ball State. We have a wonderful interim dean at Ball State. And all of those help support all of the good work that was done. You mentioned the spas. That was because of the work of a lot of great faculty. And I would say the same for diversity. We have wonderful faculty who reach out and work with diverse populations. We have good recruitment. We have nationally recognized programs that, in fact, we had one program that was recognized by AACTE several years ago, connected to diversity. And so I know I'm giving you some very, very quick answers, but those contribute to the recognition that you mentioned that the team commented on.
There were many other strengths cited, and as I said, many people look to Ball State in this state as one of the premier schools of education, so I would agree with that, and thank you to you, Sean, and please share at least mine and probably the board's admiration of the institution. I'm willing to go forward and make a recommendation for approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Roll call, please.
Dr. Byron Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. David Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Greg Gastineau,
Yes.
Mr. Gordon Henry,
Yes.
Dr. Marianne Bean,
Yes.
Ms. Katie Moak,
Yes.
Mr. Tony Walker,
Yes.
Mr. B.J. Watts,
Yes.
Ms. Carrie Wicker,
Yes.
Dr. Steve Yeager,
Yes.
Superintendent McCormick.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good work, Sean.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Teacher Preparation Program, Tryon University.
And we'd also like to recognize Tryon University for receiving national accreditation from the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation. And we have Dr. Tony Klein, who was originally the interim dean and now the official dean of the Franks School of Education at Tryon University. And I do want to point out that, and I have to say it because it really stood out during the visit, that Tryon has had an 80% or approximately 80% increase in the number of freshmen enrolled in their program since Dr. Klein joined the program. So I think that's worthy of recognition.
Very good job.
And we do want to recommend continued state recognition status for Tryon University.
Any questions by board members? Roll call, please. Do you have a comment? You're welcome. I know that you've traveled. You're welcome.
I have some questions.
Oh, I apologize.
I guess it's on me to ask some questions and make some comments. But again, Tryon University was recommended for CAPE accreditation as I reviewed many different documents. And part of it's professional development for me, but part of it is to look at the number of strengths that you do have. There was only one area for improvement, and that is really remarkable. And the area for improvement, frankly, from my opinion, was not that significant. Sort of a call that you can make. So some of the strengths, I was particularly impressed with the entrance requirements to get into your School of Education. You had raised those since the last time that you had a visit. And so can you talk about why you raised it? And obviously, when you raised it, you have more students in teacher prep, and I've seen that in other universities also. The intuition would tell you if you raise your standards, you're going to have fewer students entering into your School of Education. And I've seen many cases where it's worked just the opposite. And so can you comment on that?
Sure, and I appreciate the opportunity to represent Tryon University and the good work that our folks back in Angola are doing. Yeah, so when I stepped in as interim dean two and a half years ago, one of the first things we want to look at is retention rate of our teacher preparation program. And unfortunately, a lot of our students who had the idea of they wanted to teach, they had that idea of wanting to teach, but grades weren't necessarily getting them there in their junior year. A lot of them were dropping out of the profession, and not necessarily because of, well, I would say that they were probably better served in other areas. As a former elementary teacher, I know, and as you all know, that the demands of the profession requires. And so one of the first things we wanted to do is say, let's be realistic. To be a teacher is very difficult, and so we raised our GPA requirements and hoping long-term to build a solid, excellent program that is sustainable. We saw, to some surprising short-term benefits of, we grew our program 80% over the last 2 years from freshmen. Our retention rates are strong, and students who are entering our program know that it's a rigorous program from the get-go. We have, 9-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio, so we get these small classrooms. The students are out in schools the very first year, over 1,000 hours in clinical diverse settings, and they're proud to go into teaching, and they know the rigors that held of them, and then to earn this CAPE accreditation is just another stamp of approval, knowing that they're going and getting rigorous training at our university.
As you admit students into the school or college of education, the academic portion is important, but also I think as important are the dispositional values that a student will have. Being a teacher takes a different kind of breed, I think, and we tend to call those in teacher prep dispositional values or dispositional attitudes. Can you talk a little about that? How do you gauge those? Sure. And how is that put into the process?
Yeah, I think like many university teacher preparation programs, we have disposition reviews throughout their 4 years at a college. In addition, because of our size and because of our values, one of the pieces we have are we call benchmark interviews, where 3 times during their 4 years here, they'll sit down, get dressed up, and sit in front of first is just one faculty member, and we have a series of conversations to get to know, one, their knowledge, their skills, but also their dispositions. We have rubrics, and we follow that, and we give supportive feedback. And then the second time, they sit in a bigger panel of faculty, and they're having about a half-hour conversation. By the time they get to their senior year, they're sitting in front of a full panel of professors, 35-minute interviews, and again, based upon their knowledge, skills, and dispositions, we find that helps us keep track of our students. You know, we know our students not as students, but as people. We know their backgrounds, and that's a really important piece of Trine University. And so, so we have a good grasp, and some of those benchmark interviews is, you know, teaching may not be the profession. You know, if you want to impact lives, there's a lot of ways to do that. Teaching's one incredible profession, but it's not the only one. And so, you know, we have those conversations too. So by the time they get to their senior year, we know these students inside and out. They're ready to go. Their dispositions are off the charts. And it also helps with our employment rate, which we're proud to say is for 6 straight years, 100% of our teacher preparation candidates, if they've sought teaching jobs, they've gone to get teaching jobs or grad school.
Great. Tony, thanks for your leadership. I know you're fairly new, but you're already making dramatic kinds of differences. And as I mentioned about Ball State being one of the leading ones, I think Trine University is also equally exemplary. So I recommend approval.
Second.
Thank you.
We have one more question or comment, Dr. Yeager?
Just a comment, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
A lot of us in various parts of the state don't know much about Trine University, and it's really kind of a gold star up there in the corner, that corner of the state. And as we look at, congratulations, by the way, on your report. But as we look at, if we are going to continue to move meetings around, this would be a campus that people would say, oh my goodness, there's a remarkable effort going on up in Angola. So that'd be a good place to go if we're going to continue that.
Okay. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Dr. Ernest? Yes.
Dr. Freitas?
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Dr. McMahon?
Yes.
Ms. Bowe?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Ms. Wicker?
Yes.
Dr. Yeager?
Yes.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Moving on to a resolution honoring Dr. Vince Bertram. As we welcomed one new member in Greg, we said goodbye to another in Dr. Bertram. So if you would bear with me, I'd like to read this resolution into the record. Resolution honoring Dr. Vince Bertram. Whereas for 28 years, Dr. Bertram has been and continues to be a proven leader in the education community, recognized for his commitment to Indiana students. Dr. Bertram has served Indiana students as a teacher, a principal, an assistant superintendent, and the superintendent. Whereas Dr. Bertram continues to demonstrate his commitment to students by serving as president and CEO of Project Lead the Way since 2011. Whereas Dr. Bertram was appointed by Governor Mike Pence in 2015 to serve on the Indiana State Board of Education and reappointed by Governor Eric Holcomb in 2017. Whereas Dr. Bertram is well respected by his fellow board members and colleagues in the education community for his dedication to improving educational opportunities for all students across Indiana. Whereas Dr. Bertram has been instrumental in providing his insight and expertise in developing many of the major educational policy initiatives adopted by the board. Whereas, as a board member, Dr. Bertram has always been a voice for Indiana students and an advocate for those interests above all others. Whereas, throughout his tenure, Dr. Bertram has served the board with honor and distinction. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Indiana State Board of Education wish to express their deepest appreciation to Dr. Bertram for his exemplary service to the board and recognize him for his contributions to the board as a board member and to thank him for his dedication to Indiana students. If I could have a motion to approve that, I would certainly appreciate it. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So ordered. We have had a request for a break. So we're going to take a 10-minute break now. We will reconvene at 10:55 for discussion and reports.
morning. I just have a few things to update the board on this morning related to assessment. So just a reminder, we're initiating several windows for the upcoming spring sessions. We completed I Learned Biology last month. All of that went very well with AIR. That was their first scheduled administration, so just wanted to provide a brief update on that. WIDA Access will initiate starting on Monday, so we're doing some follow-up this week just to make sure that everything is set up and in place, but currently everything is on track for that assessment to kick off. We also have several schools and corporations that are participating in NAEP at the end of the month. Again, the department does not oversee this to a great extent. NAEP does hire independent coordinators to go out and administer that assessment at schools and corporations. But for NAEP, this is considered to be one of the big years. So every year it cycles between being a big year or a smaller year. And this year is actually defined as one of those big years. And then we also will be initiating our ISTEP, ECA, and grade 10 retest window next month. And then the ISTEP grade 10 first time administration will follow soon thereafter. One thing just to note, because this is the first year that results are required for graduation for that cohort of students falling under that grade 10 requirement, we have been receiving a lot of questions about why there's a different window for first-time administration versus the different window for the grade 10 retest. That's why we had initially made that designation, because we do have students graduating under that requirement this year. So we had to expedite that window for the grade 10 retest, so that's why it's noted a little bit in advance. And then in terms of preparation and training, we are kicking off our pretest workshops later this month. So we have several staff members that are traveling throughout the state and also a few remote sessions as well. But those are going to cover the upcoming iLearn window, the upcoming IM window, and also the iSTEP and iRead administrations. We also, because our new alternate assessment is functioning so much differently than previously with iStar, we are coordinating as well on-site IM test administrator training. So we have several of those sessions scheduled that will begin later in February. And then the other thing that I wanted to note is we did with AIR initiate an online course that trains test administrators in utilizing that system. All of that has been up and running since October, but we are starting to see more activity with test administrators being certified for the upcoming administration. So those are all my updates for this month. Are there any questions?
Any questions on board members? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next, we have accountability. We have a memo. Was there any questions regarding that memo?
That's when I had to graduate, right?
Yeah.
Can I just make a comment?
Absolutely.
Because I think sometimes when I looked at a little bit of disaggregated data further on the charters, and I think from a public standpoint, it's just important to make note that fewer than half the charter high schools are traditional brick and mortar schools, and I think that's important. We've got 17 of those, and their grad rate, if you just pull that out, is 91% versus 89.17 the year prior. And then I think when you look at, and this is not, I'm not saying there's not work to do, because there's work to do, but that's why I'm pulling that out, is then when you look at adult high school models, theirs was a 23.76, alternative or special population models were a 31.9, and then the virtual, which we have begun to address, was 33.96. So I think my point in looking at it that way is that when you're dealing with a much smaller number than the whole pool, those percentages get wacky pretty quick when you start to play with data. So I thought that was important to point out. That when you look at those 17 traditionals, they're at 91%, and I think we need to recognize that. So that was my point for the comment. Well, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, moving on to graduation pathways. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to see you all again. So I am here to provide the graduation pathways update as required by board rule. The first item is a summary of the department's implementation efforts. I'm not going to read through all of these. It's quite a lengthy list. Ben Carter, our Director of Workforce Innovations, has been very, very busy. So as you can see, there's a significant list there. Presentations are also linked within the document that you've been provided. All of the currently scheduled presentations, you can see there are 2 scheduled for January coming up as well. Item number 2 is a written summary detailing implementation issues and questions that were not addressed by the policy guidance. There is a link to that document. I just want to highlight, given the holidays, we didn't have a lot of questions from the field since the last report to the board. However, the items that were within the document really focused on the change of concentrator status, which makes sense since that just occurred. So there were a few questions about that, and then there was also a request for a Spanish version of the graduation pathways information, and so the department put that together and provided it to the field as well. Outside of that, there really weren't many implementation issues or questions from the field given the holidays. Item number 3 was professional development and training conducted by the department. As you can see from the materials provided in your packet, significant list there of different presentations that we have conducted through the end of December. And you'll have some additional updates after the ones that we have in this month. Additionally, the presentation materials are linked there for your review as well. Item number 4 is a list of corporations and schools that have developed best practices for grad pathways. They are posted on our website, and then I also wanted to draw attention to the best practices that are listed in addition to the ones that are presented to the board that have been developed specifically around bucket 2, learn and demonstrate employability skills on our website. Item number 5 is a plan for compliance and reporting to the board for including early adopter data. Item number A is that we will report monthly, and item number B is the early adopter data for 17-18 school year, which you have a link to as well. I will dive into that just briefly into a couple of sections of that document in case you have some questions and just to clarify a little bit. So the analysis of grad pathway usage for 2018 graduates is the document that you have in addition to the memo. The current total graduate count reported was 74,078. Of the 504 schools reporting graduates, 22.2% or 112 schools reported 1 or more graduates using grad pathways. But it is important to note that some of the schools reported students as grad pathway graduates even when the students could have graduated using avenues available prior to the implementation of grad pathways. So the breakdown of the tables in that document really dive into that data. So I'm going to hit on a couple of the points and then I'll open it up for questions if you have any. And Dr. Keller is here as well, who can answer some more detailed questions about the GR report. So table 1 is the statewide reporting of graduation pathways. And what I want to draw your attention to here is the total graduate count. You can see 73,008 for GQE, and then for grad pathways, 1,070. But also if you pay attention to the note at the bottom of the page, of the 1,070 graduates reported to date using the grad pathways, 91 also passed GQE. So they could have really graduated from the GQE requirements as well. So just important to know on some of those numbers. Looking at the bucket 2 employability skills experiences, I wanted to highlight work-based learning as the highest percentage there being reported of 584. In table 6, you can see for industry certifications, you have 95 as a graduate count, and then also for CT concentration, which was the highest for this particular competency of 708. When you move into table 7 and table 8, this is where they really start to dive into the industry certification specifics and the concentration specifics. So if you look at table 7, I want to make sure that you see that there is an unknown line item of 38 and what that means. So, and this is also noted at the bottom as well. So what we did is when the GR report was submitted, we took a look at those STNs and compared them to the data that's inputted into the InterSystem. And for this analysis, the list of graduates reported in industry certifications in that comparison was different. So we had 38 graduates that were reported on the GR report as industry certifications that were not in the InterSystem. There could be a variety of reasons for that, and we're taking a look at that. Could be an STN issue, could be incorrect certification reported that's not on the approved list from DWD and the state board, or it's just that they're not in the system for enters. So there's various reasons, but that's what that unknown item means. Same thing for the concentration obtained, which is table 8. If you look down to the bottom, there's an unknown number of 215. That's very similar, just around the concentrator piece. So 215 graduates that were reported on the GR report with a CTE concentrator as the qualifying graduation pathway did not have a corresponding record in enters. Again, there could be a variety of reasons for that. And then the last piece there that you can see is a report out on data regarding schools reporting graduates using the locally created pathways that the State Board of Ed approves. And I just wanted to highlight here that it's interesting that the schools that utilize these were not the schools that actually had them approved, but there were other schools taking advantage of those locally created pathways. And those were all of the fine arts locally created pathways, not the RV related locally created pathway. So those are the highlights I wanted to touch on, and if you have any questions, I or Dr. Keller would be happy to answer those.
Are there any questions? Dr. Yeager?
Go ahead.
Nope. No questions?
I do.
Take off, sir.
I'm not sure who to ask this question to. Last board meeting, we approved, and I can't remember what it was called, the exact term, but an alternative Algebra 2 course. Analytical. Algebra 2 course. Where are we with that? And you know, I'm thinking that legislatively, it states that we, as State Board of Ed members, create or approve. Does there have to be who's coming up? Does there have to be a documented meeting among the school, the parent, and the student regarding that fact that they wish to take the other Algebra 2 course?
Is your question about the form, the consent form?
Yeah.
Do you want to, since the State Board did that, do you want to?
It seems as though we're supposed to approve that, I think, aren't we? Or create it, or approve it, or wherever that goes.
Address that. Awesome.
And I just don't want to, for us as State Board of Ed members, have a misstep prior to all of that coming about. So, Matt,
sure. So what I think you're referring to is the statute dealing with the consent form for the alternate Algebra 2 course. Is that right?
Thank you. That's a very short phrase of what I'm trying to say.
And so the way the statute reads, it says that the form will be developed by State Board of Education in collaboration with CHE. So if you have any questions, Alicia can walk you through the process. My understanding is State Board staff worked with CHE as well as DOE staff to come up with the form.
And do we have that form?
We do have that form.
And don't we have to approve that?
No.
We as a board don't have to approve?
No, it just says that State Board shall develop the form in collaboration with CHE.
And have we seen that?
I believe it was sent out. Is that right, Alicia? Okay.
What was it? I didn't hear the answer.
Okay.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
I don't know with the board.
Okay, I apologize. Then maybe it hasn't been shared with State Board members.
Yeah, I would think we would need to see that before it hits the field, because we're going to be asked about it.
I can certainly forward it on to board members. Again, the statute says that it's a collaboration both with State Board and also with CHE. We've included DOE in those discussions and those conversations in developing the form.
So in response to my rambling statement earlier, there is a form that has to be completed by whom?
By parents. The consent form has to be completed by parents.
And who else?
It's a consent form signed off by the
school administration. Does it have to be the counselor? Does it have the student? I see heads nodding in different directions here. So,
right.
So let's figure this out.
Sure. So the consent form essentially lays out what the requirements are as prescribed by the statute.
Sure.
And so there's a meeting that takes place between the school counselor, the parent, and the student, where they are informed of what the ramifications are for electing to take this course. And then the parent would be required and the student be required to sign the form.
Okay. And that's all in one meeting. All those people will attend one meeting. So now the question is, what are we doing with virtual students? How does this impact them? And how are we going to get parents and counselor, and administrator, and student all together if they're a virtual student and somebody's a virtual student in the toe of Indiana and wherever the virtual academy happens to be. How do we do that? And how do we, that's legislative, right? I mean, the legislation says we have to do that and create that meeting. How are we doing that and meeting the intent of the legislation and the legislation?
Does it say we have to meet? Does it say we have to meet, or does it just say there has to be a form?
According to Matt, he just said we did. I think.
So it requires informed consent. Right. Okay. And so on the form, we had in there that there be a meeting take place. I think the issue is the department does not believe that there should be a meeting with parents before this decision is made. We put it on there just for informed consent because we believe that's aligned to the statutory requirements.
What's the statute say?
So the statute requires, and I want to be absolutely clear, because and if I misspoke, I apologize. It doesn't require the meeting, it does require a consent form.
Because I guess then, if the statute requires a form, we absolutely have to do a form. And obviously, as a school, I mean, my goal would be to meet with the parents, and the counselors would try to do their best, but there are just times when it doesn't happen. And sometimes it's on behalf of the parents choosing not to come in. And I mean, I can send home a form 25 times and I can bribe the kids with Smarties and I can call the parent 8 times and it still doesn't come in. And so my concern in putting that on the form and requiring it is that puts the onus on the school and not on the parents. And so if it's not required, but we're requiring it, I always go back to, we shouldn't try to require the schools to do more. They're already going to. Schools are professionals. Let's trust them to be professional. And so we shouldn't require them to do more than the legislation is requiring them to do. That's my concern.
I will say as a department, we expressed our concerns. I've not spoken to Dr. Yeager about this, but we expressed our concerns regarding the form. We thought the board should see the form. We also were worried about overreach because, again, I know the hardships it puts on districts. For some districts, it's easier than others. But I also know the hardship on having a physical meeting for more than one reason. I think the virtual point, I honestly hadn't really gone there, but that's a good point as well. But I have faith in our schools that they're going to handle it well and counsel kids. It's no different than grad pathways. We have to have faith in our schools that they're going to sit and have really hard conversations. So that was our concern. We just wanted it to be what the law stated, the minimum of, you have to have the consent form, which I don't disagree. I have no problem with that. I don't like the overreach. I didn't agree with the overreach of, we have to sit down and have a meeting, because I think at some point the kid's going to get tied up into not having opportunities because they can't get their parent in. And then you're going to play games with what that sit-down meeting looks like.
I would just add to that in today's world, we communicate so many different ways, and the reality is people can have phone conferences. Many of our communications now go out in mass in emails, and people prefer that. So it just feels like we're restricting and designating how something has to happen in a process. I'm uncomfortable with that.
Matt, can we, obviously there's some questions, can we share out that form?
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple things. We did, Superintendent McCormick is right. They did raise the issue, and we did ask if she wanted to put it on the agenda. I think she was at least comfortable with where staff was, even though DOE may have a different position. And
because we were deferring to your legal, and I said if you want to defer to your legal that it has to be done that way, then I would respect that. I just disagreed with it, and so did our legal.
Fair enough. And I think most importantly, the spirit essentially is providing informed consent. The form leaves open, the definition of a meeting. It doesn't have to be an in-person one. It can be telephonic. Schools have a lot of flexibility and latitude to provide the informed consent that they feel is appropriate. And I'll say this too. This decision is something that can significantly impact these students' post-secondary opportunities. So I think it's vitally important that it's not just a form, that it's actually a conversation so parents understand what the ramifications potentially could be on these students' post-secondary opportunities.
And again, teachers and counselors are going to have those conversations. No one who's in the business of educating kids is going to take those meetings lightly, but when you put in a document meeting, you're going to have people in the field who read it very black and white and who are going to say, gosh, I'm going to be in trouble with the state if I don't have a one-on-one meeting with every parent, and they're going to schedule 150 meetings with every kid who's supposed to take that class, and that's a lot of counselors' time. And you may not have even intended a one-on-one meeting. Sure. You might have thought it could be a group meeting, but as soon as we start dictating things that aren't legislated, we start getting into the weeds in terms of telling those professionals, you know, how it has to be done. And again, it could have been a phone conversation with the parent who works third shift, and that might have been okay. It just...
Have we shared this out with the schools yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
When does it go out? Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, absolutely.
Why don't I do this? Why don't I share this with board members first? And then we can talk about next steps.
Yeah. Could we maybe share out what that form looks like now and then talk about this again in February? Does that work?
Great. Agenda. You go put it on the agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. Add it as an agenda item.
But again, to Ms. Wicker's concern, you know, again, I want to stress, I mean, there was a very conscious effort to use the word meeting and not be prescriptive beyond that. And that meeting can come in any number of forms that would essentially best accomplish the purpose of both the schools and provide the informed consent to both the students and the parents.
Mrs. Stockler, I just want to make sure in Sam's and Pam's, I know after we got you're going to use it. Did we send that in Sam's and Pam's last week?
The form has not been sent. John's holding it. He was waiting to the end of this meeting today to see. I didn't know if it was on the agenda.
Okay. I just want to make sure we didn't have that end of it to deal with.
The guidance about the course has gone out, but the form is...
Okay. I just want to make sure before we said that and that wasn't accurate.
Correct.
Okay.
You know, at the beginning of most semesters and over the summers, class changes are made, and we don't have necessarily required meetings or required documentation of those changes. And that can have those can have a significant impact on student education and the direction that students take. So, you know, it's just another comment.
Well, again, I absolutely understand the concern, but at the same time, given the gravity that this decision may have on a student's post-secondary opportunities, I think it's absolutely imperative that it's a conversation, because sometimes things can get lost in translation when it's just a form and a parent's just signing. So absolutely want to be sure that parents know and kids know kind of moving forward before they make that decision.
It might be beneficial to make some contacts with some counselors across the state and see what they think and what their recommendation might be, because they're the practitioners and they're the people who deal with this every day. Yep. Not that we have to pay attention exactly to what they say, but at least get their input rather than have them react to what we're telling them. Thank you.
Just as a reminder, the timing is, I mean, schools are already asking because they're registering.
I get it.
Okay, I just want to remind this board.
Yeah, I know that. They've been doing that since last October, November.
I know, so every time we slow something down, I mean, the impact to us is different than them.
Oh, half a dozen phone calls doesn't take very long.
I know.
Okay, thank you, sir. Moving on, social, emotional, and behavioral health plan, social emotional learning.
Were we done with CT?
I apologize, were we not? Were there additional questions?
Yeah, I didn't know.
On graduation pathways? You have a question? Yeah. Okay, sorry, take off.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I was just wondering, what's your theory as to why, I'm looking at the graduation pathways, graduates, and their CTE concentrators on the list here. Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea as to why only one was in computer science? Is there something with that concentrator, or is it just not widely offered? Or?
Well, we did offer some new computer science courses this year. So the computer science 3 courses were brand new. There were, I think, 4 new computer science 3 courses. That could potentially be a piece of that it really wasn't a completed program of study. So I would assume that, but without any further analysis, I could come back with some additional information on that if you'd like.
So the one person that did have that listed as their concentrator, is that just a matter of the district they were in had other offerings, or?
It could have been a reporting issue. It could have been that a school did not think that they needed to report that into the system or into the inter-system. So there could be some analysis done to look at that.
Okay.
It could be a variety of reasons.
But that, what you have only represents those who chose to use that pathway for grad pathways. Those students may be in the course, but have passed the GQE or whatever.
Right.
So that number, although it's still small, I mean, it's smaller than we wanted to see, and I think it'll increase given the efforts across the state at every level, but that's just the number who chose to use it for the pathway.
So there are
Might get
GQE
kids that
students.
completed it that could check the box another way. Am I correct?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. That's a good point. There are students that would have been reported not in grad pathways, but with the GQE numbers that would have been CS, computer science, concentrator students. So we could get you a list of the number of students per each concentrator in each cluster from inters to show that other side of it.
So on the reporting side, do they check every box that can be checked, or you just, I mean, I did GQE, I did 3 concentrators. I mean, do you check each box, or how does it get reported?
It seems to be that is predominantly what has occurred. There's a lot of duplicate reporting that they reported GQE, but then also thought, well, I want to make sure that I'm showing that my students also met these other requirements and were concentrators or did complete a certification, et cetera. So there was a lot of duplication in that, and we're taking a look at how we can clean that up.
Yeah, reporting is, and we knew this would be an issue from the beginning, but 2 of the highest reporters that had, like, I won't say the number because you'll be able to identify, but some of the higher reporters, some of them we called them and said, this is extremely high. We just want to make sure your reporting was correct. They were commenting like, what's grad pathways? I mean, those conversations were going on. So we were like, we're making policy and we want to make sure it's accurate. So when we're reporting to the state board, we're reporting to the governor, that the information's accurate. So reporting for a little bit here is going to get a little bit interesting because we still have, no matter how hard, there are just some pockets of schools that, I mean, we've been across the state, we've put out webinars, Ben Carter in the back and Amanda and her team have been doing great things with grad pathways, but it's going to be, we got to continue to educate people on what's available. So that sent us a message where we thought, you know, it's the conversation is, I mean, we're hitting everybody, principals, superintendents, but there are still pockets of population serving our kids that don't attend anything, that don't watch anything, that aren't getting the weekly, that aren't reading anything. So it was a wake-up call to us that we're going to have to get more aggressive, but you are at the mercy of who reports. So sometimes it's a secretary, sometimes it's a bus driver / secretary, sometimes it's a principal, sometimes it's an assistant. I mean, it's all over the place, and it's hard to, so that data is what is our concern, the reporting piece.
Well, what's the department's guidance around that? Is it just give us pick one pathway or report them all?
We wanted one. You're supposed to determine what pathway the child chose. Now, if we want them to hit every one, some of our kids are going to hit a lot of those. Some will hit one. So we were in our directions, pick the pathway the child's graduating under. Now we've got to do a better job on our end, and we'll own this as far as making sure that is what exactly happens. Because if you are able to check a zillion boxes, you wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the directions are the directions, but oh well. So we're working on that on our end to control some of that error, but also a bigger problem that we ran into once we started physically calling those schools who reported really odd data that was just, I mean, outliers. Like you could look at it and say something's not right. There's a big disconnect in even knowing what it is. So we've got our work to do, but I think too, I mean, we can't do it alone. So, I mean, our professional organizations, Todd's been great to work with us, but we will have to continue to educate the field on what it even is.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm really glad you brought that up. Is there a way though that, because I get the point of needing to just pick one, but we also, we have touted this, and I think it's important that we have a lot of students who graduate under multiple pathways though. So I think, I would encourage it in some way to be able to know that if they do. I think that's really, really important, because we don't, I know some of the schools I've been in have talked about, hey, because they've touted that as we've been there, hey, we've got kids that have graduated in 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever categories they've got. I think that's important for us to know, but I get that, saying that, I get that challenge too though. So I don't want to discount that, but I think it'd be awesome to know what that what that looks like for how many different categories they qualify in. Because again, how do you pick one and how do you know which ones? Because in my opinion, there's no one that's better than another one. Either.
I think part of it is, and I don't disagree with you, I think part of it is what we're hearing from is the workload at the local level. So if the kids hit the GQE, you're going to just populate that and done. If you have to go back and look at, did they hit any of the others? I mean, that is, at the local level, having done state reporting, it's a lot. I know Marianne's shaking her head, yes, it's a lot. So that's where I think eventually we might get there, but we have to be cognizant of field, workload, and then, but the biggest thing is then we still have pockets that are just at a disconnect with it, that we've got to figure some things out. And we're working on it. It's just, we overassumed some of the high schools just understood what was happening, and even though we've made a lot of attempts.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Moving on to social emotional behavioral health plan and social emotional learning. Welcome back.
Good morning. The good news is I'm last and it's still morning. Yeah. So, good morning. You guys have the draft of the SBOE 2006 revised plan, and I think you have initiated rulemaking on that as of today. So you have that. The Office of Social Emotional Behavioral Wellness has been extremely busy over the past few months. So throughout the entire month of January and the first couple of weeks of February, there will be a rollout of the materials and resources that we have been gathering, creating, working with Lori Desautel and Brandy Oliver at Butler to release to the field. That will include the social emotional competencies, social emotional learning competencies, and the grade bands. We've worked with Ben Carter to align the employability skills with the social emotional learning competencies, and those will all be released in January, as well as all of the toolkits and the universal screening toolkit will be released to the field for their use. The educational neuroscience toolkit, including 100 days of lesson plans for teachers to take and start using in the classroom immediately, will be released in January. And then the IDOE will be hosting WebEx around the release of all these materials, next steps for schools. And we are working with piloting some schools on the MTSS framework, contacting those schools and setting up those pilots, and then finally have worked on a pilot with teachers on some teacher self-care and teacher mental health as well. We want to make sure that we're addressing all of our stakeholders in schools that need some of that social emotional wellness. So that's the update from our office.
I want to just thank Robin and your team. You have done an excellent job, but I also want to publicly thank Judge Rush and the Commission for improving the status of children. They have been by far some of the best partners in this work as far as owning it across agencies and really helping out with the plan. Our goal is to keep the plan moving, yes, not just make a plan and let it sit on a shelf like happens at times, but that is our goal. So we appreciate the work that your team has done, but I just don't want to go without acknowledging Judge Rush and her team as well, and everyone across agencies that had a lot to do with that plan.
Absolutely.
Any other comments?
Just one quick comment. Are we done?
Yep,
I didn't have a comment. I just want to thank the new slate of officers for agreeing to step up and take leadership roles among the state board, and also Superintendent McCormick, thanks for your leadership. Absolutely. And Dr. Ernest, you also as secretary, and BJ, you're back at it. So I appreciate the willingness of board members to step forward and take leadership roles. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on SEL? Okay, I do have one final thing. Matt, this is Matt's last meeting with us, and our loss is certainly PLTW's gain. So wish him nothing but the best. Sad to see him go, but happy for the opportunity that he has. So thank you for everything. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.